Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. A three. Steps back, crossover. Puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good evening, Cavs fans, and welcome to another edition of the Block the Shot to Stop podcast brought to you by the Blue Wire Network. And we are here to celebrate the Cleveland Cavaliers have won a basketball game for the first time in 10 days. 120-91 over the Utah Jazz. Obviously, a lot of positives from a 30-point win. A few things still concerning, but we want to start out positive. So with me tonight, Skylar Webker. Skylar, what positives did you draw? What are the biggest positives you drew from this game?
Feels like we got our swagger back. I mean, after that, the first half wasn't great, and we'll get to the first half, but the second half, coming in, distributing well, defense that seemed to reappear itself. Granted, it's the Jazz who are not having a very good season at all. They're one of the two teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention already. I think they're last place in the West or flirting with last with the Pelicans, but doesn't matter. This was a win the Cavs needed, and it just kind of, like I said, got your swagger back, got your confidence back, and all the ways, probably minus the 3-point shooting.
Exactly. And again, like you said, we'll talk about that. We want to start out positive. And I think if you're going to talk positive, you got to talk about the third quarter. The third quarter was the difference in this game. To set it up, the Cavs were up 6 at halftime, 51-45. And then coming out of halftime, we had our first Cavalanche in what felt like forever. Cavs score the first 15 points of the second quarter, contributing a little bit from everybody. Jarrett Allen I thought was really good most of the night, and especially there to blow up the game in the third quarter. I thought he was just kind of flying around all over the place. And then they kind of just rode it from there. They ended up outscoring the Jazz by 19 in the third quarter, and that kind of caused them to be able to cruise to a victory. They pulled all the starters with about 8-9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And here we are, happy campers for the most part. Again, not everything positive, but wanted to start out with a positive. And, thinking of that third quarter, what do you think was the difference kind of coming out of halftime? Because you talked about the swagger. They just seem like they have a whole different energy level to start the second half.
Yeah, a lot of it, obviously, they must have said something, or Kenny and the staff must have said something in the halftime around that. I think Serena said on the broadcast that in one of the timeouts of the huddles, Donovan Mitchell pointed out to everybody, let's keep them under 20 this quarter. Like they set themselves kind of a goal for the quarter to keep them under 20. And then, yeah, I think a lot of it came from the facilitating. I mean, there were some great passes, a lot of dunks, but I think the one that changed it all was Donovan Mitchell got a hard-fought rebound, bounce pass up court to Darius Garland, who then threw it even further to Max Strus, who went for a thunderous dunk. And Max Strus doesn't get too many of those very often. Yeah. It seemed like that is when the team kind of started gelling and kind of revving up behind that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I think so many times this season, we call him undersung so often that he's not undersung, but like Jarrett Allen, I feel like really in the third quarter, I looked at, he had 11 points, 3 rebounds in the third quarter. I think most of that was coming right out of halftime. He just they seemed to play a lot more through the inside. Like I was looking and we'll talk about the 3-point shooting. The first 6 minutes of the third quarter, when they went on that run, they only took 2 3-pointers. And in a game where you shot, 50 of them ish, like 48. Yes. They seemed so much more aggressive, particularly getting their head down, going to the basket, getting the ball inside on kind of, when Jarrett Allen dives to the basket off those pick and rolls and everything. And I thought you're right. And and in addition to that, you're 100% correct. They got a couple of runouts. They haven't gotten many fast break points in the last week with this kind of losing streak going on. So I thought all of that was really, really key there coming out of halftime.
Yeah, they just needed that energy. They needed that momentum. They seemed like the past couple of games, and even to start this one, they're just playing like they're tired. And I think a lot of that has to do with losing, like, coming out like your head wound hairy, like everybody's like, are you guys okay? Like, what's going on? But just showing that the rebound from bad games, that Donovan Mitchell finally had a good shooting night. Not from three, but just shooting in general, had a good shooting night. So you just love seeing that stuff, getting the and ones. And Utah helped him out tremendously because it was turnover city.
Yeah,
pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, and that's what we're keeping it positive, kind of beyond including the third quarter, but beyond. The Cavs dominated in a couple areas of this game. One was turnovers. They committed 12 less. They only committed 6 turnovers. I think they averaged about 12. So did a great job taking care of the ball, while Utah was doing the opposite and had 18. So being plus 12 in turnovers is always a very good indicator of victory. The other thing they did when they weren't shooting threes, they did aggressively go to the basket more than I thought they had in the last week, to the tune of like getting 31 foul shots. And I think that's such a key in there. I know it's a very old school basketball theory, but I think it still applies. Like, I'm a big believer in the analytics that say shooting a lot of threes is good for your team and everything. But I think there's times where you're either not getting good shots or you're just cold, that if you're, it doesn't help you shooting more threes when you're not hitting any threes. If you're not hitting threes, get to the basket, get yourself some easier shots, get to the free throw line, and then play a little bit inside out and open up that, gain your rhythm, get better, more open 3-pointers. And I thought they did that in the second half. We might as well bring it up. The 3-point shooting in the second half was better, a little bit below their average, but they were 8 of 23 in the second half. Problem was they were 3 of 25 in the first quarter. And I was getting very frustrated. I'm like, if you're only hitting 12%, shoot less threes. That's what I was yelling at the TV. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, self-explanatory, but they just kept bombing away, even though they're cold. They weren't getting as good a quality of shots. And, but again, from the positive aspect, shot a lot better in the second half, got to the free throw line a lot, and took care of the ball really well.
We talked about that not last night, but the Friday night, Saturday morning, whatever, the last game. How about, like, for a team that seems that it's gotten shaken up the past four games, stop relying your game on 3-point shot, get into the paint, get comfortable, see ball go through hoop, get your confidence back, and then start backing out. And it seems like that's exactly what they did in the second half. But boy, they were trying to, Steph Curry bury them with threes in the first half, and to no avail.
Yeah, and I get it from a human standpoint. They've been arguably, but the stats will tell you, they've been the best 3-point shooting team in the league as far as percentage that they are, and as far as mix per game, all that kind of stuff. They are one of, if not the best 3-point shooting team in the league. So I understand you don't want to get too far away from that when it's been a strength all year. But I do think basketball is such a game of rhythm, right? Like, you can get those 3-pointers just maybe a little bit later in the game. Like, get yourself, if you come out and you're shooting as poorly as they were in the first half, attack the basket a little bit more, play off of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen a little bit more. And I was really happy as frustrated as it was that they weren't doing that in the first half, I was very happy it seemed to be a focus coming out of halftime.
It very much was. Just get your confidence, get your rhythm. Then we can start getting back to Cavs basketball. And they got to that with the facilitation, the defensive aspects of it all. The first half defense was unwatchable. I mean, poor defensive rotations, slow or no closeouts on any shots. I mean, the first half defense was so bad. And you kind of got that feeling in your gut where you're like, oh man, here we go again, Yeah.
And you and I were talking right before we went on, we saw the exact same thing. And these aren't the only 3 guys, but it was like on 3 out of 4 or 5 possessions, I watched Darius Garland, Max Strus, and Ty Jerome literally stand in the paint while their guy was taking a wide open 3-pointer and didn't even attempt to close out. And that's not how those guys or the Cavs as a whole has played this year. And again, in the first half, it just looked like a tired team that wasn't giving the effort that we're so used to seeing. And I don't think it's like malicious or anything. I think it's more just it's a slog of the season. They really just want to get to the playoffs and get there healthy. But you also don't want to fall into bad habits, such as like not closing out. And we saw the exact same thing. I thought the second quarter was the biggest example of that. They're just like not focusing on defensive rotations. You have 4 guys in the paint and 3 guys wide open behind the arc when they're on defense. And, it was really frustrating. Again, positive light. We win by 30. I don't want to be all negative, but these are just some things that have kind of been concerning for a few games in a row now. And they're really concerning in the first half until they turned it around and played a lot more efficiently offensively and with a lot more effort defensively in the second half.
Yeah. Even though the first half shooting and first half defense was not very good, they still did a good job of kind of keeping control of this game. Like there was never a point in this game where you're like, oh man, Utah's going on a run, or this felt like it wasn't in the Cavs momentum at all. There were a few points where Utah got like a point, or I think maybe 4 points was their largest lead. So they did a good game management as a whole on this game, which is something we didn't see in any of the losses. But I guess it's hard to be a game management when you're losing.
Yeah, and I actually liked, and I think we and other people even more so criticized Donovan Mitchell fairly because he'd been really bad the last 3 or 4 games in a row, right? And I actually really liked his game tonight. I mean, I obviously don't like that he's 0 for 5 from 3-pointers, but I thought he was much more aggressive about going to the basket. He ended up with 16 and 4 assists, but only played 21 minutes. He didn't play the last 15 minutes of the game because it was such a blowout. So those numbers, while they seem low, once you balance them to the minutes he played, are actually pretty good. And I thought he, especially to start the game and coming out in the second half, he was much more aggressively trying to get to the basket and trying to create things on offense rather than just settling for threes. And so, while it wasn't his most gaudy stat game by any means or anything, I just liked his approach to this game and liked, with the exception of 3-point shooting, liked the results. Yeah.
It seemed like he kind of didn't try to do too much as far as like, I have to be this offensive juggernaut or I have to excel at other stuff. It was very much a game of, doing a little bit in every aspect to help the team. I mean, 2 steals, only 1 turnover to 4 assists, 3 rebounds, and then his shooting and getting to the line 9 times. So a good offensive game, or good all around game for him.
Yeah.
And just letting others and helping others find rhythm, get rhythm, being a parent on defense, 2 actually pretty decently big steals in the game. They weren't just nothing steals. So you like to see a good, not a stellar game, but not, what we saw to the Kings.
Yeah, and I'll pose this as a question to you, Skylar, and this is, I guess, a little bit positive and a little bit negative, but like they shot 68% on 2-pointers. Like 68% would be one of the best field goal percentages in the league for an individual, let alone a team. So if you're shooting 68% from 2s and 23% from 3s, why do you shoot 1 more 3 than 2-pointer for the game? I mean, again, it's the overall stats are a little bit skewed by how poor the first half was from an offensive standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, but they still shot 1 more 3-pointer than 2-pointers when how effective they were was just, had an ocean-sized gap between the two.
Yeah, I think a lot, like you said, was the first quarter, really. They were 3 for 25 in the first quarter. I mean, that's over half of their 3-point shots in the entire game.
In the first half
quarter.
Well, it was the first half. They were 3.
Oh, first half. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said the first quarter was.
No, they were 3. They were 3 for 16 in the first quarter, and then 0 for 9 in the second quarter.
Yeah. So volume shooting in that first quarter, trying to just, like I said, come out like a splash brother and put the game away early. And then we saw, what the Cavs have done all season where something isn't working or they find some other aspect to beat somebody. Doesn't matter who the team is or what the record is. They were able to make in-game adjustments and pivot to, take a much, much needed victory out of here.
No, for sure. You're definitely right about that. So let's talk about a couple of individual performances. Again, the individual statistics aren't as gaudy because the minutes were so spread out because of the blowout and the starters barely played in the fourth quarter. But I know I kind of mentioned it briefly, but I want to come back to it. I thought Jarrett Allen was the best player in this game. He ended up with 18 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, all in 26 minutes played. And I thought he was the key to that third quarter run, as I mentioned, but just overall, and like when they were playing through him, like on the pick and roll or getting him the ball at the top of the key and letting him like kind of distribute, I thought was the best offense they'd run in the last handful of games. He made one play, Cavs didn't even score on, but it was just incredible where they do a side pick and roll. He rolls down the middle of the lane and they get it to him, and Utah closes it off. He somehow pivots his body 180 degrees to be able to kick it out to a three-pointer at the top of the key. Just having that level of, athleticism and playmaking from a center such as Jarrett is, I think the Cavs, I thought he was so good tonight. I think it's something they should look to utilize a little bit more going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he kind of got tired of, even though he took a 3 tonight, which is crazy. It seemed like he got tired of being reliant on 3 ball because there was a sequence in the first half of the game where Strus throws up a 3, Allen fetches a rebound, kicks it out to Garland. Garland shoots up a 3, and Allen just emphatically gets the rebound and throws down a huge dunk, and it's just like exclamation point, like, come on. And it was kind of in a moment where the Cavs were slugging a little bit, and that just felt like Allen putting an exclamation point on it. And then on the defensive end, we talked before the game, his matchup in Walker Kessler for the night, -40 on the box score, which is about as low as I've ever seen. So he really put the defensive effort in on the other side of the ball tonight.
He did. And Jarrett was awesome. Again, like my player of the game from the Cavs perspective. Just running down quickly. I liked, it wasn't his most efficient. I really liked the effort from Evan Mobley in the sense that they've been out rebounded 4 games in a row, and they actually were out rebounded tonight by 4, but those were a little bit skewed again by the fourth quarter lack of starters being in. But Evan played only 21 minutes, had 11 points, had 11 rebounds, 4 offensively, and 3 blocks. I thought his effort was much higher from a tip to when he came out of the game for good than it had been in the last few games. I thought he was just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, he was definitely the presence on the floor. It felt like anytime he was matched up on or had the ball, that something was going to happen, whether it was, maybe puts up a shot and doesn't go, but because, like you said, the not great shooting numbers on the night. But he definitely has 4 offensive rebounds, 7 defensive rebounds, and 1 assist, 1 turnover, but the 3 big blocks. I mean, those are things that, just being the defensive presence. Yes, it's Utah. I know that we're going to get it's Utah. You guys are blowing it up. But those are like, hey, even though I'm not scoring well, I still need to be the best defensive presence on the floor. And he was tonight, and with the block numbers and just how he altered, what the other team's offense was doing. It seemed like they tried their hardest not to get the ball to anybody that Mobley was defending. So great defensive presence tonight from Evan Mobley. Kind of leading into Darius Garland, who also had great defense tonight with 2 steals and a block.
You're not gonna see that very much out of Darius. Darius, I thought, had a little bit of an uneven game. I mean, he was 2 for 8 from 3. I don't think he was quite as aggressive as Mitchell was at times, but he did. He did contribute in ways, frankly, he doesn't normally contribute. He threw in 7 rebounds. Like you said, he was a little bit a little bit more all over the place defensively. And I think a lot of those efforts, especially in the second half, were just like the guys getting fed up with how things have been going the last 4.5 games. Right. And willing to put in those, extra efforts that you're not going to be able to make all the time in an 82 game season, but you make when the time is right, the right point in the game, or, right point in the week, whatever. They definitely made a lot of those kind of extra defensive effort, extra loose ball efforts there in the third quarter, which like we already said, opened up the game.
Yeah. And I think defense really is the staple that kind of got this swagger back. Cause we talk about how Isaac Okoro always, the probably the best defender on the team. I don't know. Evan Mobley is up there just because of the size and length, but outside of Evan Mobley, definitely the best defender on the team. And, +8 tonight is plus minus. Obviously the shooting numbers are never going to be what inflates those. It's always his defensive presence on the floor. And going up against a friendly face of Colin Sexton tonight, who was getting very frustrated with the fouls and the I think I heard more swear words tonight from Colin Sexton than probably words he's ever spoke ever.
That's funny. I didn't notice that quite as much, but that's a good call out. So yeah, I mean, and we can kind of let my last points of the game, and then if you have any, is I know a few people called out some of the bench contributions as well, particularly like we hadn't been gang rebounding as much in this stretch that we've been getting out rebounded. Particularly, I got a very pleasant exchange for online exchanges with somebody who called out Dean Wade and DeAndre Hunter they combined for 0 rebounds last game. And he's like, how does 2 6'8" guys have 0 rebounds? And to some of the point, I get it and everything. Those two guys combined for like 48 minutes played and 10 rebounds tonight. Sam Merrill pitched in 10 rebounds as well, just kind of, making some of those like hustle plays. And so I was glad to see some guys, guys making kind of those contributions. Anyone you want to touch on from the bench other than that?
Let's see. Yeah, DeAndre Hunter, I mean, he's been the most in this slump. I think he's been the most offensively consistent. Yeah, still not a great 3-point shooting night, but still 5 of 10 from the floor, getting aggressive, getting into the paint, and pairing along with 6 rebounds. Definitely a need. And then his best friend with Ty Jerome. Still, I mean, great shooting nights. Oh, the one part I want to get into, free throws. It has been hair pulling lately. And it kind of is here again tonight with only 67% free throws on the night. And on a night where they got to the line like really well. They got to the line really well tonight. To only get 67% of those is less than favorable in my book.
Yeah, and it is disappointing to only hit 67%, but that said, 21 made free throws is a very good number for a game. So if they're getting them, but my biggest get to the line, especially when the threes aren't going down. So again, trying to be positive. The 31 free throws, super happy about. If they hit 2 or 3 more of those, then the percentage looks really good, and you're not too worried about it. But you are right that the free throw shooting, I wouldn't say it's concerned, but it's not something you feel great about either.
And that's something that we brought up a couple of times throughout the year. So, I'm definitely putting a magnifying glass on it with the skid lately, but oof.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll move on. We'll do a quick prep for upcoming game against Portland. This is the last game on their West Coast swing. Thankfully, can't wait to get back home, and get back into the Eastern time zone. So Portland overall, they're not having a great season, but they've been much better this second half of the year. They're actually coming in today. They've won 4 games in a row. They're actually taking on Boston right now at the end of the first quarter. They're down 4. And their last game, they beat Denver. And so this is a team with a lot of young players that's starting to play a little bit better as the year. So while they're not a great team, I don't think they're a walkover for the Cavs, especially, the last game of a long West Coast road trip.
Yeah. And when we played them, when they came to Cleveland, that's the only game this year that's gone to overtime.
Yeah.
And so they like to play, and they're a team trying to find an identity, which can always be very dangerous. Though they're probably not playing for anything this year, they're building and trying to build stuff around Advia and Scoot, and just kind of getting an identity together. Which I hope they beat Boston tonight, because our magic number is now down to 7. If Boston loses, down to 6, and if we beat Portland, it's down to 5. So you love going, being down to 5 games to lock up the number 1 seed with, 14 left?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, we're definitely their biggest fans for the next hour and a half. But you mentioned a couple of guys like Denny Avia is come on like a freight train the second half of the year. He's playing incredible. He had 36 the other night against Denver, and he had an incredible game against the Cavs, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where he was just living at the free throw line that game. It was very annoying. And they, you said like their young backcourt, Shane Sharp, Scoot Henderson, have been playing. Scoot Henderson's been playing much, much better. Shaden Sharp has had some health issues, but when he's played, he's a very dynamic scorer. So I think Anthony Simons is out injured right now. I don't know if he's playing today, but he had missed a couple of games. But yeah, I mean, I'm not hyping it up like it's the hardest game that they've played all year, but I don't think it's quite an easy game as people think either. I think the Cavs are going to need, a really good an effort more like they did in the second half. If they sleepwalk through that game the way they did the first half today and the way they did a couple of games this past week, Portland can definitely get them. I mean, they proved that by taking them the overtime, like recently, like you said.
Yeah, and they're on a 4-game win streak against Toronto, Washington, Memphis, and then, as you said, Denver. They could be on a 5-game win streak, beating Memphis, Denver, and Boston in the last 3 games. And that's, it's something to sneeze at. I like what they're doing out there. I like the pieces that they have out there. Like I said, they're a team finding their identity, which can be very dangerous because they're willing to do anything.
Yeah, and to clear that up, Anthony Simons is playing today, so you have to figure good chance of him being back on Tuesday night as well. So they got 3 really young, really talented guards in the backcourt, and like you said, Denny Avia has been playing incredible the second half of the year, at least in the games that I've seen him play. I don't watch every Portland Trailblazers game, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, and then thankfully, mercifully, after that, the West Coast trip ends. The Cavs come home, and then they'll have the Spurs. But then you talk about the magic number with Boston. You'd like to wrap this up sooner or later, because the Cavs schedule gets more friendly as far as travel goes. It gets more difficult as far as the quality of opponent goes. They have they have a lot of playoff teams coming up to close out. My goal, I'd love to see them wrap up that number 1 seed by like the end of the month if we could, and then you have those they have like 6-7 games in April to just strictly prepare for the playoffs. Both rest some guys if needed, run some different lineups or whatever you need to get ready for the playoffs. And so I'd really like to see a couple more Cavs wins, a couple more Boston losses, and then we can just fully commit to preparing for the playoffs, knowing that number 1 seed's wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, they have this game against Portland, which is not going to be a walk in the park. I think they've proven that and what they're doing now. You have a game again, then you go have a game against San Antonio. You feel good about that one, as they've kind of lost everybody, even Pop for the season. Then you get a frisky Detroit, and they are definitely identity, playing for something. Yeah, trying to prove everybody that they belong, and I think they do. You have LA, who gave you a terrible time. Then you have the Knicks, who you can beat. Defense is not the Knicks, forte, but it's a national game. It's the Knicks. It's your number 3 seed. Back to San Antonio. Then you have Sacramento, Chicago, Pacers, New York, Pacers. That's going to be a hard fought, last 5 games. So you'd love to have the number 1 seed locked up before going into that slog of 5 games.
And most of those games, so like this time of year, it's not always the quality of the opponent that makes the game most difficult. It's what the other team's playing for, because you'll run into some teams like you ran into Utah today that in some ways are just intentionally trying to lose games, right? But like a lot of those teams that you had coming up are fighting for playoff positioning or to secure a play-in spot to at least get a shot at making the playoffs. So, you know, while these might not be the best teams in the NBA to play, and when you're playing teams that are kind of like, you know, desperately trying to secure their playoff position, that's really difficult, especially when the Cavs kind of have theirs wrapped up and they don't have quite the same motivation. So like you called out that game, a handful of games from now, that game against the Knicks, April 2nd. I'd love to see the number 1 seed officially wrapped up by like that game or after that game. Because then you got like 6 games the rest of the year that, and over that 2-week period, you can just fully prep for the playoffs and take your foot off the gas a little bit. You know, the Cavs, unfortunately, with what happened this past week, they're not setting any franchise records for wins, or they don't have anything to play for from that regard. At this point, it's just get that first seed in the East, have that locked down, and then get ready, be fully prepared and fully healthy for the playoffs.
Absolutely. That's the number 1 goal. Get the number 1 seed because it's more important to you than any other team.
Yeah.
And get in there healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right. I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Block the Shot to Stop. As always, wherever you're listening, whatever podcast platform, we'd love for you to rate us, subscribe, all that stuff. If it's on YouTube, same. We want to thank, we got a big jump in our YouTube subscribers this week, thanks to our March Madness poll that we were putting on. So welcome to all of you. Hopefully you enjoy hanging out for sure. Like, you know, drop some comments, you know, during the show or afterwards, and we'll always make sure we respond to them. With that, we will be back Tuesday night after that Portland Trailblazers game. It's going to be a late one, so we'll put out on socials if we're going to do a next morning one. But for that, for Skylar Webker, I'm Kevin Lynch. Thank you all for tuning in, and as always,
go Cavs.